A young woman, barely 19, stepped forward toward what later chroniclers would call the most dangerous altar in Russian history. Inside her, she carried a poison that, according to rumor, would claim her life within 15 days. Marfa Oakina could not have known that a simple draft, offered by a desperate mother hoping to secure her daughter's fertility, would turn her wedding night into a death sentence. What should have been the consummation of imperial dreams became, according to court gossip, the spark for one of the fiercest reprisals ever recorded in Moscow's annals. Ivan IV, known to history as Ivan the Terrible, believed that his third bride had been murdered through a tragic act of maternal love. Letters whispered about in secret chanceries spoke of hidden weapons behind the curtains of the imperial chambers, powders and tinctures said to cure, yet capable of killing without a trace. Reports claimed that 20 people would pay with their lives for the mother's reckless act. One nobleman, they said, was even executed publicly in Red Square, as a stunned crowd looked on in silence. Whether every detail was true or merely embroidered by fear and rumor, one thing was certain. The young Tsarina's sudden death deepened the paranoia of a ruler already infamous for merciless justice. These stories, preserved in diplomatic notes and the writings of later chroniclers, describe how mercury, prized in the 16th century as a cure for venereal disease and a supposed aid to conception, may have become the silent killer at the heart of a tragedy echoing through the centuries. The bridal chamber of 1571 was not only the scene of Tsarina's demise. It was, as later writers put it, the birthplace of a monster, the moment that drove Ivan to plunge Russia into an empire of suspicion and dread. 15 days, the accounts insist, contained more treachery, anguish, and consequence than decades of open war. This is the tale imperial healers preferred to bury, the one hidden beneath court records for more than 400 years. On that fateful table, salvation and ruin lay side by side, a mother's gift transformed into the empire's funeral bell. Before we unravel how this disaster unfolded, give this video a thumbs up if that opening revelation caught you off guard. And imagine, if you can, the despair of a mother realizing she had doomed her daughter while only trying to help. Subscribe so you don't miss the royal secrets still lurking in Moscow's shadows, and in the comments, write the name of a queen, princess, or noblewoman you'd like us to investigate next. Whichever name earns the most votes will become the focus of our next explosive inquiry. Now, let's step back to the moment when the stage was set for catastrophe. The year was 1571. Across Russia, the Oakina, Ivan's feared regime of secret police and brutal raids, held the land in terror. The Tsar, now 41, sought stability through dynastic continuity. 2 years earlier, his second wife, Maria Temryukovna, had died under circumstances many already whispered were suspicious. With no strong male heir, Ivan launched what chroniclers called the largest bridal contest Muscovy had ever seen. From the forests near the White Sea to the plains beyond the Volga, envoys summoned over 2,000 eligible maidens to the fortress of Alexandrovskaya Sloboda, 100 kilometers from Moscow. The citadel, ringed by wooden walls and crowned with onion-domed chapels, also served as headquarters for the Tsar's dreaded bodyguard. Executions in its squares were said to be as common as daily meals, a grim reminder to the gathered women that the ruler's favor could be as deadly as his wrath. The selection followed strict Byzantine precedents handed down from the emperors of Constantinople. Physicians examined each candidate with almost forensic intensity, certifying purity, fertility, and health. Astrologers compared birth charts, searching the stars for signs of harmony or discord between maiden and monarch. At each stage, the field narrowed, from 2,000 hopefuls to 24, and finally to 12 finalists. Foreign envoys observed all of this with deep unease. Venetian dispatches, coded to evade interception, spoke of a Tsar swinging between pious gloom and sudden violent rages. To them, the choice of a new consort was more than a courtly ritual. It was a decision that could reshape the balance of power between East and West. A stable marriage might calm Ivan's temper and secure an orderly succession. A misstep, they feared, could ignite disaster. It was a choice that, many feared, could deepen the instability already rippling through Ivan's realm. On June 26, 1571, the final decision was announced. Marfa Vasilyeva Sobakina, the daughter of a wealthy Novgorod merchant, was declared the victor of this imperial pageant. Contemporary accounts describe her as gentle yet composed, a young woman whose quiet intelligence seemed to balance innocence with grace. To many, She appeared the perfect counterpart for a ruler still mourning his losses and yearning for peace. Yet within days of her triumph, ominous whispers began to circulate among her attendants. Martha, they said, appeared pale and listless. Her strength was fading even as preparations for the wedding gathered pace. No physician of the time could diagnose her condition. Their remedies, herbal tonics, incense, and whispered prayers, did little to halt her decline. Some suggested exhaustion from the endless ceremonies. Others murmured of sorcery or the jealousy of rivals. Later generations, reading between the lines of the surviving letters, proposed another explanation. A potion prepared by her anxious mother, meant to ensure fertility on the wedding night. According to these later narratives, the mixture contained mercury, then believed to stimulate conception, but in too great a dose, it ravaged the body from within. Whether truth or legend, the story seized the imagination of historians and novelists alike, becoming part of the dark mythology surrounding Ivan's reign. And so, Marfa Sobakina entered Russian history as both bride and enigma, her brief passage from selection to sickness remaining one of the court's most perplexing mysteries. It was, as one chronicler wrote, a prologue to storms yet to break over Moscow. At just 19, Martha embodied a radiance that court writers called both divine and dangerous. Her hair, they said, gleamed like molten gold, and her eyes, deep and clear as northern lakes, held a calm that seemed to promise stability to a restless empire. Imperial physicians praised her vigor and declared her the best hope for producing strong heirs. She was the daughter of Vasily Sobakin, a prosperous merchant from Novgorod, whose wealth had lifted him into the ranks of a new and ambitious class, one beginning to challenge the old boyar aristocracy. Her family's connections, including a distant link to Malyuta Skuratov, the feared lieutenant of Ivan Zaprotniki, helped open the gates of Alexandrovskaya Sloboda, where hundreds of maidens competed for the Tsar's hand. To some observers, Martha's ascent symbolized a quiet revolution, commerce and talent pressing against the barriers of hereditary privilege. In her, Muscovy's future seemed to flicker, not only resting on bloodlines, but also on merit and enterprise. Facing her across that vast chasm of power was Ivan Vasilyevich himself, a man whose legend was already darkened by suspicion and rage. At 41, he had buried 2 wives and 2 sons, each lost surrounded by whispers of conspiracy and treachery. His frame, nearly 2 meters tall, gave him a commanding, almost inhuman presence. Yet within, he wrestled with storms of insecurity and superstition. As ruler, Ivan wielded terror with surgical precision, using executions as theater to remind all of his dominion over life and death. Each bereavement deepened his obsession with producing a legitimate heir. Every marriage became a desperate gamble for dynastic survival. To Ivan, Martha represented more than beauty or comfort. She was, or so envoys believed, his final chance to anchor the dynasty with an unassailable successor. But while courtiers busied themselves preparing beaded gowns and ceremonial crowns, other forces, unseen yet unstoppable, were weaving a darker fate. In Novgorod, Martha's mother, haunted by fear for her daughter's health and fertility, turned to an old household remedy. Later tales insisted it contained mercury, praised by village healers for its supposed power to awaken the womb, but deadly in excess. She was said to have measured the dose with trembling hands, never realizing that the very draught meant to secure a grandson for the throne could instead poison the daughter she adored. The wedding, held on October 28, 1571, in the Trinity Church of Alexandrovskaya Sloboda, should have been a display of imperial triumph. Instead, it carried the weight of an omen. Witnesses later recalled how Martha, beneath the crimson weight of her bridal robes, looked frail, her cheeks drained of color. Attendants discreetly steadied her as she approached the altar. During the solemn exchange of vows, she swayed twice and collapsed. The priests hastened to interpret her fainting as mystical modesty. But the physicians nearby noticed something far more troubling: tremors rippling through her limbs, sweat glistening on her brow, and pupils unnaturally wide. They whispered of a dangerous imbalance in the body, perhaps a poison none of them could name. The wedding feast, meant to last until dawn, faltered long before midnight. Platters of roast swan and exotic delicacies were left untouched as panic crept through the hall. Spiced honey stood untouched as concern rippled through the hall. Martha was quickly escorted to the bridal apartments, rooms arranged with lavish oriental splendor. Thick Persian carpets softened the heated floors, braziers glowed with coals, and incense coiled through the air. The scents, meant to kindle desire, only served to mask the sour tang of illness. When Ivan entered, dressed in ceremonial silk, expecting to claim his bride, he instead found a young woman struggling to remain conscious. Chroniclers say the Tsar paced the chamber, torn between anger and alarm, summoning physicians who brought vials of herbs and prayers, but no remedy. The marriage night, meant to secure the empire's future, dissolved into a vigil beside a stricken bride. Meanwhile, if later accounts are to be believed, the potion prepared days earlier had already begun its merciless work. The mercury absorbed into Martha's blood advanced silently, disrupting nerves, searing her stomach, and destroying the very organs meant to bear children. No healer of the 16th century could have traced the link between a mother's talisman and a Tsarina's sudden wasting. For 2 weeks, the court lived in tense stillness. Ivan, restless and sleepless, refused to leave her side for long. Some sources describe him kneeling in prayer, others speak of furious interrogations, the Tsar demanding to know who dared harm his household. Servants whispered of hexes or secret enemies among the boyars. Physicians clung to simpler explanations: exhaustion or a fever brought on by travel. Yet nothing stopped her decline. On November 13, 1571, 15 days after the wedding, Marfa Sobakina breathed her last in the Tsar's arms. Whether she whispered anything before dying is lost to history, but later storytellers imagined a final plea for her mother's forgiveness. Ivan's grief hardened almost instantly into rage. Convinced that hidden hands had poisoned his third wife, he launched what chroniclers would later call a storm of vengeance. 20 people, attendants, physicians, even distant relatives, were seized for questioning. Some were tortured, and rumors claimed that a few met their end publicly in Red Square, as an example to traitors. Whether these accounts exaggerated or reflected grim reality, they captured the atmosphere of terror unleashed by the tragedy. That autumn, a bridal chamber meant to secure dynasties instead became the birthplace of the Tsar's most corrosive paranoia. The sudden loss of Marfa Sobakina did more than darken one household. It pushed Ivan further into the brutal vigilance that would define his final years and stain Russian history with dread. The vengeance that followed Martha's death was as chilling as the rumors that inspired it. Chroniclers tell how Mikhail Temryak, brother of the Tsar's late second wife, was dragged into Red Square before a sea of onlookers. There, according to the accounts, he was impaled alive, a spectacle that lasted for 3 unbearable hours. Chains clinked nearby as other prisoners watched, realizing the same agony awaited them. Vasily Sobakin, Martha's grieving father, escaped execution only because Ivan forced him into distant monastic exile. His sons were not so fortunate. Records speak of beheadings justified by charges of witchcraft. What began as mourning swiftly became a purge, driven by a ruler convinced that hidden enemies had stolen his bride. The investigation, led personally by Ivan, was merciless. Torture chambers echoed with screams as servants, doctors, and relatives were interrogated about forbidden potions and sorcery. Interrogators pressed them to explain how a seemingly harmless fertility remedy could kill a Tsarina. Testimonies pointed to Martha's mother, who, so the story went, had secretly mixed a potion to ensure her daughter's fertility. Its key ingredient, mercury, was celebrated by healers of the day for treating everything from skin ailments to infertility. To modern ears, it seems reckless. But to 16th century minds, it was advanced medicine, a precious substance believed to restore balance to the body. By the time this confession surfaced, however, the scaffold had already claimed the innocent. Some captives were released only after brutal floggings. Others vanished forever into the dungeons beneath the Kremlin. Ivan's wrath, once ignited, rarely cooled. Centuries later, scholars tried to separate fact from legend. In 2009, forensic anthropologist Saitan examined remains believed to belong to Marfa Sobakina. Testing revealed traces of mercury in the bones, supporting, though not conclusively proving, the chronicler's tale of a lethal folk remedy. A facial reconstruction from the same study revealed a young woman of striking delicacy, her features soft, yet unmistakably regal. The contrast between that serene image and her recorded fate only deepened the sense of tragedy. Martha's short life inspired not just history, but art. Rimsky-Korsakov's opera The Tsar's Bride, and Lev May's drama of the same name drew from her story, wrapping it in music and poetry so that her sorrow would outlive the archives and chronicles. But behind that cultural legend lay a darker legacy. Ivan's grief hardened into paranoia, and that paranoia reshaped an empire. Historians link the aftermath of Martha's death to the Tsar's later atrocities, the massacres, the policies of repression, and the terror that drenched Muscovy in fear. The episode seemed to confirm Ivan's belief that betrayal could lurk even within domestic walls. Poisoning the cup meant to bless a dynasty. From that winter forward, Ivan tightened his grip on his subjects and advisors alike, setting the stage for years of suspicion and bloodshed. All of it, the storytellers insist, traced back to a single act of misguided love, a mother's desperate attempt to secure her daughter's happiness through medicine. Whispered about in both peasant cottages and courtly chambers, a few grains of mercury passed in secrecy became, in the lore of the time, the quietest weapon history had ever known. What other secrets, one wonders, still lie hidden within the sealed ledgers of royal households? How many queens, princesses, or brides died from treatments once believed to promise vitality or fertility? For every tragedy recorded, countless others must have vanished without witness, buried with their victims beneath cathedral stones. Imagine, for a moment, the torment of Martha's mother, if she ever realized that her gift had brought ruin instead of blessing. Picture the Tsar's household, paralyzed between loyalty and fear, as friends became suspects and physicians' remedies turned into evidence of treason. The tale reminds us that beneath the splendor of crowns lies peril as lethal as any battlefield. The documents uncovered so far reveal only a fragment of the hidden history within royal medicine. They hint at dynasties redirected by powders, herbs, and tinctures, substances meant to heal but capable of ending bloodlines. If Marfa Sobakina's tragedy has left you eager for more revelations from the shadows of Europe's royal courts, make sure to subscribe and activate the bell so you'll know the moment new investigations are released. Share this story with anyone fascinated by the veiled scandals that shaped nations, and tell us below which detail unsettled you the most. The possibility of a mother's accidental poisoning, the gruesome executions that followed, or the idea that a simple fertility recipe could unmake an empire. In upcoming episodes, we'll unearth even more mysteries of royal bedchambers, queens whose illnesses hid darker truths, and medical customs that decided who would rule and who would vanish. Martha's fate, tragic as it was, may prove to be only the opening chapter in a long chronicle of hidden dangers lurking behind palace doors. The next investigation promises revelations even more astonishing. Stay with us as we continue to unveil the secrets that once dictated love, death, and the destinies of crowns. Heat. Music, heat. Heat. Music, heat. Heat. Music, heat. Music.